but it was a kind of a difficult time. I mean, 5-0 start, everybody was excited, obviously, but right before that trip to Thanksgiving trip down to Southern California, they lose Josip Vrankic. So you got, fifth year senior, one of the leaders on the team, along with Jalen Williams and Keyshawn Justice and some of the other guys in there. But I mean, Josip is Mr. Santa Clara. I mean, the guy loved to play at Santa Clara, and he was wanted to play as many years as he could, as they'd let him, as he told me. But he ended up with mono. So he missed the better part of 7-8 games. And there were some tough losses in there. There was a loss to UC Irvine. There was a loss to Fresno State. So after beating TCU, a ranked team, they came up short against Fresno State. So while I think the players who had to pick up the slack were developing and growing, not having Josip back until mid-December was very difficult for the team. And then he started to get integrated again, back into what everybody was doing. Then it was the old Josip again. And though I think there were times throughout the year that, players get sick or have a knock or whatever, the team beat BYU at home. And BYU typically is a tough team to beat in the West Coast Conference, like a Gonzaga or like a St. Mary's. Mm-hmm. But a home win over BYU on a last-second shot by Jalen Williams was one of the high points. And you start thinking, okay, now we're starting to get that form back that we had early in non-conference. And then to beat St. Mary's at home, and then go to Gonzaga and lose by 12 and be in the game late. That, I think, you're starting to see an idea of what this team could do. And then just to carry that through to the conference tournament, the number 3 seed, which is, I mean, you get to a shot at, getting to the quarterfinals and then beat Portland and then come up short 3 points against St. Mary's. I think all that put together, the team had confidence. The team was feeling like they were a postseason team. I know there's a tier of tournaments after the NCAA tournament, but that it was definitely a team that would deserve to play on, and they got the NIT bid to play at Washington State.
I mean, it really felt like, for me, yes, like the Stanford game, the Nevada game were like two of those games where like, wow, it's like, okay, this is going to be like, they're going to be in the conversation at some point down the road. I think the one that really kind of like stood out to me was that TCU game without Vrankic in the lineup. And that was kind of, I think for me, was when we saw Jalen Williams really kind of like break out and be the guy and just carried that team in that game. For you, it's like, especially with Jalen, the way we just saw him progress and get better and better and better throughout the course of the year. How excited was that to kind of see like him kind of go through that? And because like even from a year ago, it's like, it seemed like he made leaps and bounds improvements in his game.
Absolutely. And when he came in as a freshman, and I remember seeing the group of incoming freshmen play before non-conference started, just going to a practice before the season and asking, like I usually do, because I'm not with the team every day, a couple of the assistant coaches, can you tell me, who should I be looking at? And they would go through, this kid's going to be good. This player's going to be good, but watch out for Jalen Williams. I was just like, okay, Jalen Williams, I'll write that down. And freshman year, he forced his way into the starting lineup. And he did have an injury, I think, early sophomore year, but then came back and grew. If you look at his numbers, he was growing the entire time. And he always had the confidence. And you're like, boy, that kid's pretty confident for someone who's kind of learning the college game, growing into his own body. And by the time after COVID, by the time we get to last season, it was almost like there wasn't anything he didn't think he could do. And he would show you on a nightly basis. Defensively, just outstanding. So smooth with his mid-range jump shot and his 3-pointers and his explosion to the basket. You're starting to think, okay. But I mean, it's been so long since Santa Clara has had somebody that would be in the conversation for an NBA first or second round draft pick, let alone where he was taken so early in that first round. That didn't enter my mind. I'm pretty sure it entered the coach's mind, but the growth from conference tournament, just before conference tournament to the combine, and he just shot up everyone's draft boards. And it was it was super exciting to be able to watch the draft and see him picked so high by Oklahoma City. And it was just like, okay, yeah, and just always so humble. and you can credit his family for that, his mom and dad and his brother. There's no better story from a Santa Clara standpoint than Jalen Williams.
Yeah, he was so exciting to watch. And again, you talk about like how humble he was throughout the whole process. I think that's one of the things that I think endeared him to a lot of like other like WCC fans and everybody else. It's like, this is a guy who worked hard, he put in the time, like he always was like that good person throughout the whole process. And I think that was one of the exciting things to see, like even those of us who like maybe like are like, because me being a St. Mary's alum and a USF alum, it's like I will say, like, he was one of the guys, like, I did not want to see Jalen Williams in the conference tournament because of how good and how much he had developed, and because we knew he could carry a team, and because we had seen that throughout the course of the year. And I think for those of us on kind of the WCC Insight or whatever, had seen his growth and like, this kid's an NBA player, but because he plays for Santa Clara, he kind of flies under the radar and all that sort of stuff. It's like, is he going to make? That's when we started to see maybe late first round, mid first round, and then as you talked about the combine, he just jumps and jumps and jumps and jumps as basically the secret was out.
Absolutely. And I think when I first started looking and seeing, we all see the websites and people making their first and second round draft projections, March 50th, 49th pick. And then as it gets closer to the combine, then he, jumps up a tier like 5 or 7 slots. And then now you're starting to see him at 26, 25. And again, just like super proud, but I mean, nothing compared to the Santa Clara, Herb Sendick and his staff, and obviously his parents and his brother. It's just real cool.
Yeah. All right, let's get into the team that's going to be here this year. So no Jalen Williams, no Vrancic, no PJ Pipes.
Right.
But you still have Keyshawn Justice. You have Jordan Williams, who's returning, Jaden Bediako.
Right.
Talk about the guys who are going to be back on this roster and kind of what we should expect from these guys.
Yeah. Two starters return. So it's Keyshawn, who's a fifth year player, 6th year, he's a grad student. Yeah. And so he's a big guard, over 1,000 points in his career. I mean, you've seen him play. He's steady, excellent shooter from outside, and the team's leading rebounder from last year. So even at 6'7", just a body, he's got a nose for the ball, and that veteran like leadership, right? So you've got him coming back. You've got Jaden Bediako, and I know you talked about, he didn't start last year, but 7 games or 8 games, but 6'10", big bodies, his senior, can block shots and just hustles. He gets up and down the floor. Parker Brown, who came in from Missouri, it transferred in, not this year, but before last season. Shot blocker. And it's pretty nice to have a couple of guys who played that position down low in Herb's offensive and defensive scheme. So you've got those 2 guys. And then coming back from an injury, Jordan Williams. And so he was, one of the first guards off the bench for Herb. He got injured right at the end of last year, pretty serious injury. And so he's going to be back. And Carlos Stewart, is back as well. And he was like, I don't know, like the microwave for us. He'd come in, the energy with which he played. He started a couple games in the middle of the season when PJ Pipes was out sick or non-conference, and just super exciting to watch. Had a great game against San Jose State. I think the player that we haven't named yet, who I'm really excited to see more of, is Jacob Holt. So he was injured at the start of the season. He's a sophomore, 6'9", 220, 230. And from what I hear, because I didn't go to Europe when the team did the tour through Spain and played in France just a few weeks ago, is that he's really made some leaps in his rebounding. And so, when you don't have Josip Vrancic, who was a strong rebounder, you can't rely entirely on Keyshawn Justice, so though he'll be there again, grabbing boards, offensive and defensive. I'm excited to see Jacob Holt again as well. So I know I pretty much named everybody, but you've got those 2 returning starters, and then you've got a host of guys who are just chomping at the bit to play.
And because we've also had, like, Santa Clara has a couple of big transfers that came in. As you've talked with the coaches, like, who from the newcomers should we kind of like be keeping our eyes on or looking for this year?
Right. Well, we have a couple of guys. So I said Carlos Marshall before, but it's Carlos Stewart is the returning player, and Carlos Marshall, who goes by Chef, 6'6", 200-pound grad student from Tennessee State, two-time All-Ohio Valley Conference selection, led the team in scoring last year at about 13 a game. So he's a big guard, and he's going to come in and he's going to mix it up. And I don't know if you follow the Broncos on Instagram, they showed some of his highlights from Europe. So I'm excited to see him play. And Brandon Pojemski, who is a sophomore transfer in from Illinois, didn't get a lot of action last year. Another big guard, 6'6", 200-pounder. I think he played maybe 16 games as a freshman, but from Wisconsin, was the 21 USA Today Milwaukee Male Basketball Player of the Year. And he's a scorer. He averaged 35 points and 10 rebounds as a senior high schooler. And so, as you could tell, I've got all my notes here. But
I saw that.
So excited to see. Listen, I'm so excited to see these guys because I know they come back and are already practicing again at Santa Clara. So when I get back from my business trip, I'm looking forward to seeing them play. And then you've got a couple of players from Germany, Jake Ensminger, who is a big guard, 6'9", can handle the basketball, obviously. And we've got a 7-footer, Christoph Tilly, coming in, 7-foot center from Berlin. So, gosh, can we start tomorrow?
Just so like kind of like building off of what the success of last year is, like, what's that going to be able to kind of do for the confidence of this group, for the veterans who are returning, for Herb and the staff to kind of like put together, like, all right, this is what we were able to accomplish a year ago. Let's kind of go out and let's try to build off of that. What's kind of like the build off of last year?
Well, I think, and this is not having talked to Herb and the staff too much, until you do it, you don't know if you can do it. And so start consistently beating teams like BYU and St. Mary's and have a shot late in games against Gonzaga and maybe turn that corner. So they were able to do that, beat the BYUs, beat the St. Mary's last year. And the year before that, I think the last 2 years on the road at St. Mary's. So you're starting to see some consistency with the program to get into the conversation for the top three. And, you know, listen, every team that goes out there wants to win the conference. And that's been difficult. We know that with Gonzaga and all the fantastic things Mark Few has done with the program there. But, you know, I think Santa Clara believes that they belong in that conversation. And the results last year showed that. And, you know, Jalen Williams was there, obviously, a huge part of that. But now you've got players that have seen how it's done and are ready to do more of it.
All right. I'll get you out of here on one last question. And so of the WCC cities, like obviously there are some great WCC cities amongst it. Like, what's your favorite non-Santa Clara city? And what's your go-to food stop in that city?
Oh my gosh. So we do a lot of eating with the team. So and there were quite a few games last year that we didn't travel. So COVID kind of hurt us on the travel. So what are we talking about? WCC cities?
WCC cities.
Gosh, I like them all. I'm a real big fan of Portland. So you can always find a great place to eat and great place to get donuts. I know there's a couple of nice donut places there. I'm a big donut fan, but I'm a big fan of Portland as a city overall. And that's not to disparage any of the other cities in the West Coast Conference. I know you're going to be talking to Jack Cronin at some point. San Diego. I'm a big fan of San Diego as well. Oh gosh, there's a fantastic taco place. There's a bunch of them in San Diego. And for the life of me, I can't remember the name of it. It's out by the freeway, but I'm a big fan of tacos in San Diego and donuts and food trucks in Portland. So I don't think you can go wrong if you choose those jobs.
I'm in agreement on Portland. That's one of my favorite cities too. Like great food scene.
Have you ever had reindeer sausage?
I don't think I've had reindeer sausage yet.
There's a spicy Southwest mac and cheese and a reindeer sausage that are fantastic if you can find the right food truck in Portland. So I definitely recommend that.
All right. We'll definitely be looking for that on the next trip up to the Pacific Northwest. Well, thanks, Anthony, for taking some time, talking some Santa Clara basketball. Season is almost here. Only I think we're less than 50 days away. So
yes.
Great being able to talk to you, and we'll catch up down the road.
Yeah, Zach, this has been great. I look forward to seeing you on the trail. We're going to be back traveling more this upcoming season. So I look forward to meeting up with you, and maybe in Portland, I'll let you buy me some mac and cheese.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks.